excited to get back into it.
It'll be good to have you back on that side.
And I like her because she's a lot. She's amazing. And there's a lot of mayors I wouldn't want to work for, but she is not.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it was busy.
Bless you.
I'm happy to be back to some people. That makes a huge difference.
You know, at the end of the day, people are like, why am I so lost? Some companies work with something that's like, okay, we'll pay you so much money.
It's not about money. That's true. It's a good company. It's just, to me, it's just not fun. And you guys know me well enough to know I gotta have fun when I'm doing stuff. So.
Yeah, do you know any of the people that are watching?
I don't. I wish I did. So I have some guidance.
No, she doesn't have
What's that?
Thanks for waiting. It's now 5:15, so we'll go ahead and get started with our work meeting for Wednesday, June 12th, 2019. Are there any items that need to be reviewed for tonight's agenda?
Mayor, we will wait on item 3.5 until a resident can come in to help with that item. So if he's not here, we may need to postpone that.
Okay, all right.
We're not ready to report on the 11 information equals, we'll postpone that till next time.
Okay.
He had a phone call.
All right. Any future agenda items council would like to see addressed?
Yeah, I have them. Let's see.
I as well.
Are you gonna do
Go ahead.
the planning commission one?
No, go ahead.
When we met with the planning commission, they asked, it was the when to stop subdivisions from continuing to subdivide. They would like us to discuss that in council meeting, so that we, I think the idea behind it was, are we gonna allow the city to whittle away little by little? What should our policy be on that?
So they have some guidance.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're concerned about that.
But, they've had a couple of areas, that have come in and asked for subdivisions, obviously with the 1 acre to half acre stuff. And again, I think it's a bigger discussion of really the areas and how they've been, what subdivisions they've been through previously. And again, at what point do we say you've already been through a subdivision? That's
Instead of subdividing that
enough.
subdivision again into
Instead
smaller
of
lots.
subdividing a subdivision, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and
and I know that
establishing.
there's some land issue uses in there that really need to be navigated in that, but I think they have a valid point. Obviously, if it's tied to a, PUD, or if it's tied to other things where there's open space and those types of things, that obviously those are much more difficult. But a lot of this has to do, I think, with our some of our bigger agricultural areas, and those that, again, we've kind of fixed the deep lot subdivision issue in a few of those, but there's certainly still other areas that are open to those subdivisions.
Well, and establishing expectations for future infill.
Yeah.
Some idea of what future, actually existing residents can plan on for
Yeah.
these areas.
Absolutely.
Yes. And not that we can hold future councils to that, but to have some sort of policy from the council that does guide the decisions of planning commissions. We're all on the same page. So
John
that's,
has a
I
comment.
support that. Go ahead.
The easy fix for this is change the zoning.
Yeah.
Fix the underlying zoning, because I don't know if we can say you cannot subdivide, because the statute allows it.
Right.
So the fix is just to fix the underlying zoning.
That's kind of exactly the same thing we talked about at that meeting, but we need to have a policy or something, guidance from the commission that says that.
Well, you direct the city to rezone it.
So let's put that on the agenda for future meetings, so we can discuss exactly what we need to do and have that conversation with the notes.
No, do you want to? You can, or I can?
Either one.
I have one more.
Go ahead.
So, we've discussed McQuiston and Gina and 7300 West ad nauseam, and, but it always just stalemates, and the problem is it can't just stalemate. We can't just say, well, it didn't happen, well, it didn't happen, we're gonna build another 100 homes, well, it didn't happen, we're gonna build another 100 homes, well, it didn't happen, and that's what's happening. We're constantly putting more and more demand on this infrastructure that cannot handle it. Not to mention, it's a safety issue for the citizens who live there. And I don't care if we have, I understand the argument behind we don't wanna buy property, I understand that. But the problem is, we have to find a solution. Because right now, we have a situation where one property owner is holding up a whole road. So what happens now on 7300 West has to happen? Oh, sorry, one property owner said no. What happens when the road to the high school, what is that, 60th West, right? What happens when we have to do that? We don't have all the right of way to all these things, we just say, oops, sorry. We have to find a solution. So I think it has to be discussed, and we have to find some different ideas. Maybe it's we buy the property, but we put a restriction on it, a deed restriction or whatever you want to call it, that says if you ever develop this property, you have to pay the city back or something so that the residents who gift don't feel like they should have waited, right? But a solution has to be found, or we have to say we can't keep building houses, which obviously we can't do that either. But I just think it's completely irresponsible on our part to continue to put homes and residents on infrastructure that is not safe and doesn't handle good growth.
With the exception though, that the city always has to look at our decisions being equitable and fair.
Sure.
I mean, you cannot treat one resident differently than any other, and we will, depending on what our solution comes to, we can't also not establish just a precedent.
Precedent.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, it's very important that we not establish a precedent that then really takes away our decision-making power in the future. So I agree more discussion is necessary, but I don't think it is us not doing what we should have been doing. I think this is a challenging situation that has been made more challenging by residents, singular or plural, who haven't been willing to work with us. Certainly, we have put effort forward for years to try and solve this. So I don't wanna leave the impression that we as a city council, either this sitting city council or previous ones have, and staff, have not worked tirelessly to try and solve this. It is just one of those very challenging city issues that I agree more conversation, but you're also gonna have to expect that the residents are going to need to meet us in the middle somewhere and understand that we do have rules that we have to follow.
No, and I don't disagree, but maybe then this, I just think there needs to be a solution. I don't think we can just keep hanging it out there. Maybe we say, hey, this area, has to have, I don't remember what you call them, a special service or district or something like that, to where everybody has to help pay for the road. Something has to get done, so they get done.
I'm certainly supportive of more conversation, just knowing it's just gonna be tough, just a
Oh,
tough.
for
tough.
sure.
But agreed, infrastructure and overloading infrastructure in particular is not an answer, not a long-term answer certainly.
So I'd like to do that on the future.
I know Brett actually wanted to talk about that a little bit more, but he had to step out for a second. So if we can come back to it when he comes back in, I have just a couple of quick things, and I have a couple of thoughts, but I'll wait till Brett's in here on that particular issue. Two issues that, or not issues, just items that I think we need to look forward to scheduling. One, sitting on the UTA Advisory Committee, had a meeting there today, and obviously there's a lot of good work going on there, but I've had a couple of conversations with Carlton Christensen, the trustee that represents obviously our county on there, and he would like to set up a time to come and just talk, give an update to the full council about UTA, what the trustees have done since being put in that position, and then also talk about some of the plans for future growth and those things out here. And I think it's best, I can't convey all the things that obviously the trustees are doing, but I think it's best that comes from him. So I'd like to set up a time for Carlton to come in and talk to the council.
And will he be prepared?
What's that?
Was he thinking?
Do you know what he said? He said honestly, if we let him know, he'll make it work. So
Will he be prepared to talk about this new, almost Uber type solution?
micro transit,
Yeah.
they have lots of things going on, or lots of potential things, ideas for the micro transit. So
Okay.
yes, he
Yeah, I'd
definitely
like
will
to
be
know
willing
more.
to talk
I
about
have a
that.
lot of questions.
Councilman Smith, I have one question because I just walked back in here. Are you talking about a work meeting or talking about a general meeting?
Work meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, Carlton is trying to make an effort to get to each of the city councils within the valley to be able to do that. And obviously, he's got a lot to get to, so I think if we just take the initiative and reach out and really set up that time and get him scheduled, we won't fall to the bottom of the pile
We'll
there.
reach out tomorrow. But do you mind if I go back to the previous conversation?
I told him that you wanted to,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry. We've had a lot of dialogue with Sherry on this because she used to get pounded by residents that signed over property they didn't want to work for. And
Pounded my car.
And we're very sensitive about setting precedents. But my job is try to find solutions to problems, right? And we could move forward and condemn this property, and condemn enough property and put a protection zone strip on it. That way, if they are coming to develop it, it's on the title, so if they want to develop, provide that in the lots in the future, it costs them X amount of dollars to cross that protection strip, which is the same dollars that has to do for the price of the land we had to buy up front. That way the residents in the area feel like they've not been harmed by deeding their property over to us. I talked to John, he says, they are used, and Herriman's actually put protection strips in areas, but because of things coming through, like 5600 West was our first one, the first couple of years of corporation. When retail came in, we waived those protection strips because we wanted retail to come in. Makes sense, right? Chevron, Art Circle, and those things. So the city can have either waive at that point or collect the money due to them for the infrastructure. So that's a way of doing that. It's just something on the table. We don't like to do that. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not. But at least gives that peace of mind to residents that took a leap of faith, signed their property over to get the project done. And if we can have more dialogue on probably next work meeting, put it on the agenda and bring you a plan and how we approach that and then start the condemnation proceeding, we can do that.
Well, I appreciate that, because my follow-up question to that was going to Sherry's, was going to actually be on the legal end of that, is what other legal options do we have to at least consider as we have that full discussion?
Yeah.
To say, because I think we have worked very, very hard to try and come up with a solution. And you're right, Sherry, it's not fair that we have one individual that's keeping that whole thing from going forward, but at the same time, there has to be fairness to those others that are willing to step forward and to do what they need to do to make it happen. And so, and that was really my question, is how do we do this fairly, and what other options should we at least consider as we have that discussion?
We'll bring those up too, but me and John have been talking about this on and off for several weeks, trying to say, what can we do? What's the best step to make? And we feel like this is probably the cleanest. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
The more complicated you make it, the more causing problems you may not be able to sustain. So, but we'll bring that up next. We'll put on the agenda for next work meeting. That's convenient with you all, so that if things go well, usually on a condemnation, they'll allow us to take epoxy and start owning the property, and then we go to mediation and settle. And so we'll bring all those, a timeline of that, so we could, no promises, Sherry, but we could possibly, if things go well, we could get construction this year still.
Yeah, I
Just
just,
a bad time to bid.
yeah, I just would like to see some solutions, because this is not the only issue, you know what I mean? Just, it's one road, and there's several.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, our dialogue with each other is, Gino might be the same issue, or Saints Fair West might be the issue. Back, we found out that Sherry owns to the center line of the road. And,
They did curb and
and I
gutter
said, you're willing to sign over that property? So,
I hope she said yes.
but she wasn't so free with that.
Well, and I mean, a city never wants to go to condemnation as a first step, but I think we have years and years of documented evidence of us attempting and trying and bending over backwards to make this thing work, so.
I know of 2 times in 20 years, there might be 3, I know that John and Gordon might know. I think twice we've only condemned property twice. The garden plot, you're very familiar with that, so you were in office. And one many, many years ago up on Rose Canyon Road in 61 West. That's pretty impressive when you think we don't try to take a hard line as government. We try to work with people. And sometimes you just have to put the road in.
You just have to.
And there's no other choice.
And we're not making any, just to clarify, we're not making any decision about
Talking
condemnation this
about
time,
it.
we're just talking about a future agenda item.
Yeah,
I know
That's
we're
it.
not, it's just for
I don't know where you're
clarification.
going with that, that's fine.
So I just wanna make sure we, stick to what was noticed, so I don't want us to,
So nod to talking about it.
so,
Just
yes.
clarifying, we don't do much.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
and then are you doing?
Clint, did you have another item?
I have 2 more, actually. One is in the vein of talking, asking to set up a time for Carlton Christensen from the UTA Advisory Committee. Most of the other committees that we have members that sit on actually get quarterly reports or some type of a report from those committees that we sit on. One that we do not, that I think would be advantageous for us to invite in to give an update, would be from the Sewer Board and Craig White. I think there's a lot going on in the sewer district. We've got upcoming elections for an open seat there. We're working on the thermal drying project that's down there, which is a multi-million-dollar project to help us, save in the waste department. But again, I just think that it would be well with us to invite Craig in to give an update himself, to reach out to him.
Whether it be a recommendation, work meeting, or a general meeting. Probably both would work.
I think if,
I think the main thing is that there's an opportunity for the council themselves to hear from Craig and the things that are going on down there, and he can present. We certainly can have the information to put on the website. I think
either would be fine, I just think that we need to make some time available.
We'll talk to him, see what his preference is.
And we've got a sewer board meeting next week, so I can talk to him as well. The last thing I have is we've talked about this before, we've kind of kicked the can down the road a lot, but it's our 8.25 zoning. And the fact that we've never put a replacement zone in place. We have issues with that zone or those that would fit well in that zone. I think this is another discussion we need to bring back and figure out what we are gonna do with that zone.
It's got, I mean, there's applications sitting in Rose Basin area right now, and the master plan calls for it to be agriculture, and the only thing that's available is R110, and that does not fit the plan.
Yep.
So it's because we've got to get the zone approved.
The planning commission did recently make a recommendation on the 8.25 zone, and that will be coming to you for discussion, maybe even our next meeting, so.
So that's already queued up.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Good.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Jared, did you have anything for future
I've
items?
got 3 or 5, depending on how you want to count them. So
got a
along with,
He's
we'll
got a
go,
notebook. so
That new
I
map.
can never figure it out either.
find the right notepad.
format.
So going along with planning commission, I'd like to have a discussion about having regular reports from the planning commission at our council meetings. Maybe have the chair or vice chair come and give us a report on what they've been working on. I think there's still some, I guess, I wouldn't say miscommunication, but not as good a communication as there could be with decisions they've made or concerns they have with things that are coming, and just the decision-making process between the two bodies, maybe just some disconnection still. Maybe just a discussion on how we can close that gap a little bit. The second would be how we can, and having a few discussions with a few of them that kind of spurred all this, so this would be possibly the number 2, is talk about some ways to encourage some more single-family development. Looking through the code and these conversations we've had, and even Clint and I met with Mayor Wilson on Monday, they gave us a little peek at the overview study. It was kind of, I mean, we know this and feel this, but Herriman has a larger proportion of apartments and townhomes than just about any other city in this area, and looking at it, I think it really comes down to economics. Like we've inadvertently, I think we've created some conditions that it's easier and economically better for them to do those here than in other areas. So I think I'd like to just have a discussion on some ways we can maybe adjust some things planning wise that will encourage them to do that.
I will say, just a thank you to communications that sending out the notes from their meetings has
Yeah.
been
Yes,
very
that's kind of what
helpful.
spurred this
Has been very
conversation.
helpful,
Way
so.
helpful. Thank you to Michael for.
And Michael, yeah, he sees it that night and make sure we come out that same night, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
they're
been
really
very
It's a
helpful.
good
Thank
job,
you.
and that's what spurred this.
Yeah.
And then the other 1 or 3, so you kind of want to count these ones, is I think we're well overdue. We've had lots of conversations in the background regarding our December 12th meeting, our annual meeting. Since that time, we've had several complaints from employees about inappropriate behavior measures. We've taken several measures during that time, but it's time to wrap all that up. We've had kind of an independent, I don't want to say investigation, but a consultant come in and look at the situation, give us some recommendations. We've kind of gone back and forth how to handle this, because we've said, well, we wouldn't handle anything else in a closed meeting. However, we want to protect the employees that have been affected by this, but we also have to communicate with the public. The measures that we've already taken and further measures that we need to take, one of which is the suggestion to have some harassment training. We want to do that just for the mayor, for the council, or for all staff, employees, etc. It's part of HR. But we just need, I think it's time to discuss that. I don't think there's any more information to uncover. Related to that is compensation. We have promised to the residents that we would review the mayor's compensation and change that to be commensurate with his actual duties. I don't think we anticipate making any more changes to those duties, so it's time to follow up on that and do what we told the residents that we would do. And then the last thing would be, we mentioned it a few times, but now we've ran into it already, David representing the city at events, etc. There was a question of ceremonial duties. I don't see anything that's expressly the mayor's ceremonial duties. We had the issue at the rodeo last weekend, I guess, and how to handle that. We're putting employees kind of how to recognize mayor and council. I wasn't there the first night, but it sounds like wanted to take some personal liberties to that situation, and there was a little bit of a confrontation. Employees need to know how to handle those situations. We had the issue at the movie appreciation night where David came up and grabbed the gift cards from the employee that was there. There's just kind of a long list of ongoing things that I think we're kind of unduly putting people in uncomfortable positions because they're not sure what.
Well, let's
they want to say.
discuss this at a future meeting and not when it hasn't been notified to the public. Give them an opportunity instead of going through everything right now. Especially since I was not aware that this was something that you wanted to talk about today.
This is
So
what we're saying, is these are the issues we need to talk about in a future meeting.
yeah, but we could.
I don't feel like we are discussing it right now. I think Jared's just explaining what the context of what those discussion points.
For council members
Need to
who
be,
have to
so.
vote on whether or not they agree to discuss it in a future meeting are entitled to ask a question or two.
I'm supportive of having the discussion. Obviously, from my point, I've been asked a couple of times to, help pass on some information from the council, and so I've sat in a couple of those meetings to pass on information with Brett and David, and so I know some of the conversations that have been had, and then some of the actions that have been taken after having some of those conversations, and I think there is warranted still some follow-up and some concern there that we need to address, and so I would be supportive of putting that on an agenda.
So, I have some mixed thoughts on this. I'm always supportive of discussing something, but here's my thinking on this. The residents did in fact elect David to be the mayor. We as a council, as was our right, chose to put down conditions based on behaviors that we felt were inappropriate for that position. To David's credit, I will say, as far as, I don't know all the particulars, but I will say, for the most part, I think David, Mayor, has abided by those. I am personally not supportive of reducing his compensation lower than the existing city council members, and I'll tell you why. We chose to take away those responsibilities. He has not gone to the meetings that we have discussed. I think he's abided by, for the most part, unless you can tell me differently, the conditions that we set forward. It feels to, and he has been publicly redressed widely and soundly, and I have heard from many people in many other cities that have expressed, frankly, appreciation to us as council for doing what many councils wish they could do for a mayor doing something that they don't agree with. So I think we did the right thing. I'm not saying we didn't, but at this point, further action, unless you can convince me there's something so egregious, feels punitive to me. And we have so many much, much bigger issues that even spending one more minute when we have completely stripped him of all of his meetings, we have stripped him of his ceremonial duties, we've reduced his pay, can we not focus on things that are more important? We've got density issues, we've got transportation issues, we've got infrastructure, we've got zoning, we have got a million more important things. So convince me that it's worth any more time than all of those things that I just addressed, because otherwise I think it's a waste of time. Because if it cannot be handled behind the scenes with the staff, talking to him one-on-one, unless it's required to come out for the council, then I think it is a waste of our time given the more important items that we have. That being said, I'm happy to have the discussion, but again, I think we can get lost in trying to punish when in fact our city council has more important things to do.
I would agree with you, and that's why we need to have this. There's a lot.
Okay, and like I said, if you can convince me otherwise, but I am tired of wasting time on something that is not what we were elected to do.
Talked with Councilman Smith afterwards, we're continued to spend an egregious amount of time dealing with these issues ongoing.
I am willing to keep an open mind and listen. I just would think that the citizens would be frustrated knowing all of the many, many things that we have to do and that we continue to talk about this, what feels like ad nauseum. I'm not saying it's our fault, perhaps there
That's
are,
why I'd say we
there
can
are
separate it.
things happening that are requiring us to do that, but
So
that's
we
my
can separate
upfront
into
comment.
3 separate issues. I mean, one is the complaints from employees since December that are ongoing, that we continue to have week after week, meeting after meeting. And the actions that we have taken along the way and those that have been suggested that we have to decide as a body of what to do next. The next would be the events and how we want to handle that. We've talked in kind of circles and now we're to the point where we're having those events and people need to know what to do and how to handle it. And then the third is the compensation. My position simply is it doesn't have to be a big drawn out thing. We simply said, and I continue to get asked about it by residents, is you guys said that you would make those changes and then change his compensation to be commensurate with those duties. We just haven't done that. I think that's a pretty quick discussion and to rip off.
I will have the discussion. As I said, I just know we have more important things to do. And that's where I want our focus to continue to stay, is on the priorities that we know truly matter for the city. So let's talk, we've already probably spent too much time talking about it. So, I mean, I'll have the discussion, but again, we have a lot of really important things to do.
Any other items for future
So I
agenda?
just wanna make it clear, those things are harassment training, I can just tell you that employees get that every year, we do go through that already.
And I'm supportive of the entire council having harassment training. Again, important training, it's fine.
Yeah, it was recommended by the third party, looked into the screening was to cover that, and he was a federal AG's office, so he knows the issue very well. Be able to cover that, and John has the contact, so if you wanna do that in public, we can.
I think it's supportive of follow-up on the whole thing too, especially if you continue to get, I do continue to get questions about it, like just have a follow-up
And then be done with
And
it.
a lot of compensation, you won't have a discussion on, so it'll be in the work meeting as a discussion item,
Yes.
okay.
Is there any other items from the council that would like to address in future meetings? Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 3.1, new employee introduction. Travis, you're up.
Come on in. Maybe we'll come along.
I know there was.
Well, now we better go along this one, so the councils can see it. Sorry, we can do our best to squeeze in.
I'll scoot up. These are new, they've been here.
So as they come walking in, we want to thank the council and the mayor for sure. We have a strong compensation package and a strong benefits package. You'll see from our new employees, we have some great experience that we're able to get for our new employees coming through. So we're gonna start with number 1, Mike Velasquez. That's the last one coming in. But he comes with 17 years from Salt Lake City. So he is our public works inspector. He's level 3 for us, and we lost our last one. And we really needed someone with experience, and he has stepped in and done fantastic for us. So Mike, you want to tell us just a little something about what you enjoy about Herriman City?
The people. People are very helpful, very friendly, easy to work with, so I'm enjoying it here.
We're about 10 minutes away from where you live, right?
Yes, I just live on the other
Yeah.
side of this building, so that's, the commute is great.
You're referred to as number 1, do you go by number 1 or Mike?
He will now.
Boy, you started something there, Travis.
All right. So our next one, we're gonna go to John Brandon here. So we were lucky enough to steal him from Washington City. He comes with at least 12 years of experience as a building inspector. We brought him as level 3 and a plans examiner as well. But we were enticed enough to move him all the way up here from Washington City. So John, you wanna say something?
I'm glad to be here. It's a great opportunity to come up here to Herriman City. I didn't know about this white stuff that falls from the sky, but I got used to it. So other than that, it's fun to be here. Thanks.
He did the Winco plan review, got it all done within 30 days. So it was completed, comments back, so
Being
rock
Bill?
star. It's not, the plans were even picked up, but that's later on. So I'm just telling you,
Where were
he
you
did it.
6 months ago then?
Yeah, where was that? It was all him.
Good job.
Okay, so our next one, Devin, we're gonna go with you in our streets department. So he came in as a streets tech 1, and he had a little bit of experience as general contracting. So Devin, want to tell us a little?
Yeah, well, something I really like about working here is the people, and I mean the benefits are amazing, and you know, working with the people in the public works, everybody's willing to help you out. Just good. It's a good environment to be in.
Luke, do you want to introduce your water operator, William?
We've got Will Schwartz there. He is one of our most recent. We've actually had a few new hires in water, but a couple of the others couldn't make tonight work to be here. So we're gonna come back. We'll get the spotlight for water tonight. He spent quite a bit of time in the military prior to being here, and we'll let Will tell you a little bit about himself now.
Yeah. So I'm just really glad to be here in Herriman. Like Luke said, I was in the military, I was in the Marine Corps, so I like being able to be part of something that serves the community. So glad to be here, working in water, working in infrastructure. So something that's really fulfilling for me. So thank you all for that opportunity.
5 days growth, what we got going on?
This is from January 5th.
I was starting to think transfer to HR, because been in HR all day, going through its training and certifications.
It's been that long, it feels like it's that long. All right, Anthony, we're gonna turn it on over to you to introduce Kyle and Andrew.
So we'll start with Kyle. Kyle Thorlark, you may have seen him around a little bit. He's been with the city for quite a while now as a seasonal employee, mostly helping out with events at the ice ribbon. Did you help out at Blackridge at all?
Yeah.
You worked at Blackridge, and then he bounced over to Parks to help us a lot with the Christmas lights and stuff like that. So towards the end there, we were able to bring him over and have him work with us quite a bit. As soon as he finished high school, we were lucky enough to hire him on full time. Kyle's a man of few words, but his actions speak volumes. He's one of the hardest workers we have, so we're very lucky to have Kyle here with us.
Say something, Kyle?
Love Herriman. I used to live here. My parents been working here for multiple years. I just love the people. Decided to keep working.
Okay, so Andrew Jensen, he comes to us by way of Orem City. They trained him up real good for us, and we poached him away. So he was able to come in, hit the ground running as a full-time sprinkler technician, irrigation technician for us. We had Jordan Richards, one of our irrigation technicians, just leave, and he was able to step right in and take over for Jordan. So Andrew's very motivated, very willing to do whatever we ask of him. So again, another awesome hire for us, and we're glad to have Andrew with us.
I really like how any questions I have for anybody in Public Works, they've all been there to help me right away. So it's definitely great for teamwork and positive vibes here, and I really enjoy it and ready to start this career.
Tammy, we're gonna turn the time over to you. So Tammy's got 2 new customer service tags. One is Summer Velasquez, and the other one is Lori Chris.
Yes, so, and actually, I guess, Summer, you've been with us for a little while. She actually started out with us part-time, and she was doing such a good job that we moved her into full-time, and it's been a great experience. She works really well with the public. She's very friendly, and she always has a smile when you come up to the front window. And do you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
It's kind of crazy. I guess my background wasn't a ton in customer service. I've worked at an elementary school before, so my customers were the kids.
This is very similar.
Perfect preparation, so it prepared me well for it.
That's why she's so patient with us.
So yeah. But I have enjoyed being here. I moved to Herriman like 6 years ago, and now working in Herriman, I don't really ever have to leave Herriman, and I just love being in the little Herriman bubble. So.
And then we have Lori Crisp, and Lori was actually a de-escalation expert. So she is great to have during water shut-off time. We can't wait to exercise her skills.
Also great.
Yes.
They need her as a few more council meetings.
And until July, she's actually helping out in the recorder's office in the mornings, and then she moves into customer service in the afternoons. But once July is here in the new budget season, she will be down in customer service all the time. So,
and if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I love working with the customers. I definitely like de-escalations, so I am looking forward to next week. I think everyone's been super sweet since I've been here, super helpful. I love the city. I love working for a city that's growing so fast, so much opportunity, and I'm just really happy to be here.
Well, thank you, new employees, and thanks to our support to help us get these awesome people on board. We're really excited for the staff that we're getting.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You guys are gonna stick around for the rest of the meetings, right?
Watch it.
Sure you will. She's gonna go de-escalate herself.
All right, we'll move on to item 3.2, discussion of zoning map amendment seeking a rezone of 6 acres from AMSD to C2.
Thank you. This was recommended to you for approval by the Planning Commission. I mentioned in your packet that we did not have a summary from the meeting. I did receive an email from Sandra Llewellyn today that we did have 3 attendees and all 3 were in favor of the proposal. And so that will be probably scheduled in your next meeting for action. You'll notice at the Planning Commission there was 1 dissenting vote, and that was just expressing a concern about making sure we reserve enough of the Auto Mall Special District for that purpose. Yeah, and we've been assured by our economic development team that is still in place.
Okay. Any questions? Nope. All right, we'll move on to item 3.3. Discussion relating to the Herriman City Animal Services. Justin.
Alright, so Destiny's pulling that up here. So this is a continued discussion from last council meeting. We wanted to kind of give some more information on it, and then we turned over to Chad to discuss some of the things that he's doing. So basically we'll just kind of go through some of this. So this kind of illustrates the changes in the contract that have happened. So the top one, calls for service, you can see I've kind of split it up. 2015 to 2018, there was a 23% increase. Then there was a substantial increase between 2018 and 19. So I wanted to illustrate the difference between 15 and 19 as well. So as you can see, that increase was about 30%, and that is for calls of service that were provided by Salt Lake County Animal Control. The next one is population growth, and as you can see, we've grown, quite substantially over the last several years. But between 2015 and 18, there was a 49% increase in growth, and then 15 to 19 was a 67% increase in growth.
What's most interesting though is the calls for service that would seem to dictate the cost of service certainly hasn't been their standard by which they've increased the cost.
It's based on
what's their
population. It's based on population, and that's how they calculate.
And yet their cost is based on calls of service.
So
disparity.
Right. So what that illustrates, so cost of service, as you alluded to, we had a 25% increase between 15 and 18, and then between 15 and 19, there's a 64% increase in cost. This next kind of illustrates calls for service per year, and then just kind of illustrates what you've seen, just you see the numbers now. So as you can see, we've had a steady increase in calls for service. And then the population, obviously we've seen a great increase in our population over the last several years. One of the things that I want to illustrate here that calls the cost for service is as we get closer to that 2018 and 19, you can see there's a large increase there between 18 and 19 as costs for the service. The 2019 is a proposed, that was based on the agreement they sent over for us to amend the original contract that was from 2015. As you can see, that went up about $80,000. And that's because I think they took a closer look at our actual population. Now that population is based on what the county's determination of what our population is. You can see they're considering our current population at 39,000, which we anticipated actually being in 2019 being closer to 58,000. So if they charge their service based on per capita $8.50, that actual cost would be closer to $495,000, not $333,000. So when the census comes out, we anticipate that, and all these populations get adjusted to be more accurate, you're gonna see a large increase.
Well, I think we would probably anticipate that even if that was a mid-year adjustment, that they would probably take the opportunity to level that out if new numbers came out.
They possibly would, we have to look at the agreement to see if they can do that.
Yeah.
And we're pushing pretty hard to get that updated because we're losing out on our BC road monies and our
Yeah.
sales tax distribution, so we are incentivized to get that accurate as possible. And in fact, not to derail from what you're saying, but so council knows, we've already met with Gardner Institute once and working towards that, so.
So essentially, that's kind of just a follow-up to what we had last week, so if you have any other questions or discussions, we can do that. Like I said, Chad will kind of discuss the direction in which we're headed, so.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to discussion of police and animal control budget. So who's going there, Chad or?
I think I'll defer to Alan on the budget analysis that he's done, and then I can talk a little bit more about the operations and some of the inquiries we've made to look at a solution.
Okay.
I hope we know we're excusing Troy tonight.
Well, we don't have much on the, well, we've done a lot on the budget so far, but you won't actually get the budget until probably the end of July, 1st of August for this. But what I can tell you is based on the model that our police department's putting together, this first year is going to cost pretty close to the $330,000.
Can we go back just a step as to more specifically what you're referring to? We're talking about doing animal control.
Animal control.
In severing our contract with,
Right.
with Utah, or Salt Lake County.
Yeah, we are in the process of looking at what it would cost to run our own department. Now, Chad will talk to you about what they're trying to do as far as the organization that they want to set up in this. But as we go through the budget, this first year is going to be real close to the $330,000 that they did. But there's a lot of startup costs in this first year that won't go forward. But it's also a change in level of service that they're proposing that will be dramatic change in service. But at least this first year, we're gonna actually be fairly close to what we budgeted. We've gone through a lot of it. We don't have all of it together yet, but my estimate right now from what we've put together is we're gonna be somewhere around $315,000 to $320,000 based on the model that our police department's putting together.
So with the anticipated possibility of making the change.
Right.
No different than what we've already got budgeted in.
Yeah, when we come back to you with the actual budget, we'll be taking it out of the line item for Salt Lake Animal Service and moving it into a separate one. And just to mention along the same line, is that we are in the process of separating the entire public service, safety, police and animal services out of the general fund so that we can better track the tax money and their specific revenue. We'll create a separate special revenue fund for that. Now, it won't be, there probably won't be enough revenue generated by animal services to sustain it by itself, so it will be supported somewhat by the general fund, but we're going to separate it so you can see what's coming and going easier versus what the costs of the police are.
Just to clarify, being supplemented by the general fund doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna cost us any more than it would have.
No, it'll cost us actually less, but,
it's just where the finances come from.
right now, what we received in tax money this year on our specials, on our safety enforcement area was more than what we needed to run the department for the year. Now, we've got budgeted $333,000 this year to pay for Salt Lake Animal Services. Like I say, we will come back to you with a budget amendment where we'll move that into our public safety department, and we will then remove it from our emergency enforcement department. No, it's not gonna cost us more, it's just a different way in which we'll be handling the funds. Make it more transparent to see where the money's coming from what those costs.
So I might have been premature in deferring to Alan, maybe I put the cart before the horse, but I was tasked with taking the $330,000 that we had proposed from Salt Lake County and trying to see if we could develop a in-house or self-provided animal service unit and for the same money or less. With the instructions, obviously, that we didn't want to decrease the level of service, and if we could, we would want to increase the level of service. So with that task, I went and actually Justin and I and the chief went and visited several different facilities around the county. We looked at some alternatives in looking to a different service provider to see if we could get a quote to contract those services with another service provider, another city that had their own animal services, or if we could bring those in-house or do a combination of the two. And with that amount budgeted, we were able to develop a plan and comfortably feel like we could provide those services in-house for, like Alan mentioned, the first year with startup costs the same amount or just a little bit less than what we would contract with Salt Lake County, and then also elevate our level of service substantially. And the level of service, the example of the level of service increase that I would throw out is the proactive patrol. So Salt Lake County currently is only reactive. They only respond on a as-needed basis. So if we have a resident that calls them with an animal problem, they'll dispatch an officer out here and then, respond to the problem, and then that's it. They have instructed their officers to attempt proactive patrol as they have time, but just based on our own observations, we don't see a substantial amount of that proactive patrol occurring with Salt Lake County. So the plus of bringing that in here and hiring our own animal service officers would be that they would be, assigned to the city. They wouldn't be traveling the county and handling calls in Salt Lake City and Magna and then trying to fill in and supplement Herriman as needed. We'd have them in the city all the time. So their 40-hour work week would be spent within the confines of Herriman City, which would allow them a great deal of time to do proactive patrols, community education, community outreach. We anticipate being able to increase our licensing over and above what it is now with Salt Lake County. And currently with Salt Lake County, we don't receive any of those revenues that are collected. So another perk for bringing it in-house. As I went through those different alternatives and looking at contracting or a combination of contracting and bringing it in-house, we determined that we're able to hire 2 animal control officers and hopefully recruit some very experienced animal control officers that could help us get this program off the road or off the ground fairly quickly. And we did come up with some plans for some fail-safe plans because we only have less than a month now to get this program off the road. If that's the route that the council chooses to go, we do have some backup plans where we would partner with South Jordan and even Riverton to help us, kind of mitigate our development time. We also looked at contracting shelter services, and another pro of contracting the shelter services with a municipality that's closer to Herriman than Salt Lake County shelter is that our residents don't have to travel as far, and there would be a partnership with 2 shelters that we looked at in licensing and again, that education piece for our residents and having it feel to our residents as if it was more of a Herriman-based operation than having to drive all the way down to South Salt Lake to pick up their missing dog. So we did get bids from both a private entity, Stone Ridge, which is who Riverton contracts with, and then also with South Jordan City and their animal service or their animal shelter, and both of them were pretty flat with their fees and what they charge us. For example, South Jordan would just charge us their flat fee. They're not looking to make revenue off of us. They'd be an overflow shelter for us, and Stone Ridge would offer us the same contract price that they've done with Riverton. another kind of incidental perk to that is Riverton budgeted substantially more than they've actually spent, and their fiscal year is almost over. So they're what they anticipated spending in shelter costs with Stone Ridge was really they've only spent about 10% of that for a full year. So we're hoping. I mean, you know, we're kind of doing a little bit what we did with the police department, but maybe even more so in that, you know, none of us have any animal control experiences, so we're shooting more from the hip than we were. We're shooting more from the hip than we were, you know, last year with the police department. But I feel pretty comfortable in the numbers that we've projected, that we've added enough padding in there that we should be able to provide a higher level of service for the same amount or less than we were paying Salt Lake County, even with our startup costs this first year.
So just one quick comment. For me, you said what I think is the key word. In fact, I wrote it down well before you started talking. It is proactive.
Right.
For me, it becomes very apparent that the calls of service don't even remotely track the population growth, which I would think the only result you can come to is the lack of proactive, because there should be some level of tracking, and there's such a huge disparity that I think the only conclusion you can come to is exactly as you said, that there's not been a proactive. It just simply is if there's something egregious enough to bring out a call, which is not, I don't think, the level of service that our residents would want. So for me, when you're coming in at least a similar cost and you have all of these plans for a really proactive plan, then for me it becomes a no-brainer.
Yeah,
So well done.
I think that service you just referred to is the D- level service, and it's like, okay, we're getting what we're paying for, but we're not.
Right.
That's the problem. It's like as the price keep going up, we're still getting, and I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, it's just there's a big disparity there.
Yeah, there's no formula in their contract that allows for calculation of cost based on calls per service. It's only per capita, and I'm not misspeaking there. And so even though our calls per service or our responses aren't increasing commensurate with our population, our pricing is based solely on population. So
It's feels like a faulty formula.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and when you actually convert that over to a call for service cost, that's a pretty
Making a lot.
astronomical amount for a call per service cost if you want to change that over. To Nicole's point, there was two key things that I picked up on there. One was just as you mentioned, the proactive nature of being able to have officers within our own community to do that, because it's something we struggle with all of our code enforcement stuff, is having the resources and the time to be proactive. And I think that's something that is needed and will be beneficial overall. And the second key piece that I picked up on there was simply an increase in the level of service currently being provided. And I was waiting for you to get to the point, because you kept referring to they or that, you know, and so I was waiting to hear that there was not just one officer in the community, but as you said, we can hire two.
Right.
And when you look at, again, I think ultimately the responsibility of the council and as the city administration comes to being most efficient and economical with our taxpayers' dollars and providing the best service that we can, and where possible, increasing that level of service. And we've, you know, I think we've set us on a good course with the transition of the police department and being able to increase that level of service. And now we have another opportunity to take another step in the right direction to look out for their dollar and increase the level of service that's being provided with that same dollar.
Right, and I think when we're talking about level of service, one thing that I neglected to mention, you can define increased service level several different ways. And when it comes to animal services, I know that several of our residents feel a level of service provided by Salt Lake County is the no-kill and, you know, humane treatment of our animals and that sort of thing. And so when we looked at structuring an animal services unit for Herriman, we were very sensitive to that. And it would be our intent to maintain a no-kill status. We've talked to our partners who we anticipate contracting with in the future to make sure that their policies and procedures are consistent with that philosophy. And so when we say we wouldn't diminish our level of service, we included the no-kill philosophy in that as well.
And I want to add a few things, which I was going to cover that, which I'm glad you brought that up. The level of services, by the time currently right now, when you get a call for a stray dog or whatever, by the time they show up, it's gone. It's not in the same area. And so by being proactive, having officers, boots hit the ground right here, they're right here. We can get there in minutes and have a chance of picking that animal up, get them back to the owner before they get hit by a car. And that's the philosophy, and educate the public on, dogs on leash in parks and pick up to yourselves. To me, it's that what I've heard from all of you is to approach it as we're gonna educate, and this is your community animal services. We wanna get your animals back in your home. We don't want to impound them. That's not our philosophy. We don't want to take those. We want to make sure we can keep them safe. Is our whole philosophy on that. So.
Can I ask one? You've addressed the housing of the animals. I want to hear the plan for the housing of the officers, because I know that's something that obviously we know with bringing the police department in house that we're tight on space.
That's a future.
We're out of offices.
That's a big one.
What is the initial plan just for working space for those individuals?
I'm speaking from a level of inexperience with animal control, but I do believe that our animal control officers would be similar in employee status. They wouldn't be sworn, but they'd be similar in employee status to our patrol officers. And currently our patrol officer's office is their truck. And that's kind of the route that we would assume that animal control would follow. We would house them in the police department, and so they would have access to the police department. They would be BCI cleared and BCI users, so they'd have the same level of background check as a normal police officer would. And then we'd let them use our patrol room and our computers, and intend to have them on our domain so that they have the same accessibility and working environment that a patrol officer would.
They'd also report up through department as well, correct?
Yeah, our idea is that rather than assign them to a patrol sergeant or a lieutenant, that they would just work directly in the office of the chief, and so they would report directly to me, and then be in my division. So it would be an administrative division that they would fall under, and we want to, if we do decide to take the route of self-providing, we want to have the animal service officers be a little bit softer. We don't want to have the approach or the perception by our citizens that we're sending these officers out to heavy-handedly enforce ordinances. Exactly. We want to focus more on education and community outreach.
And reunification and those types.
Right, and so we wanted to try and draw a distinction between, have them in the police department, but draw a distinction between them and a sworn officer. So that's kind
we've
of
had
our
officers that will be able to do our own shipping, shots, those type of things, so it's gonna be really a proactive thing. Another thing I was gonna cover is our agreement verbally with South Jordan. They have two officers and a tech that comes in at part-time techs, and they kind of gave us some good numbers and information that they don't see them adding any more officers on for the future. They're about 85,000 population when you think about our growth. What come out of that though is these officers are rotating on call every other week, and so they're very interested, like we are, rotating it to, they'll cover South Jordan's with a 4-week rotation. So if you see a animal service down South Jordan, it's because that's our on call. And likewise, if you see South Jordan on the weekend or at holiday or night, it helps the culture. And when we get further on in SEAM updates about talking about our relationship with South Jordan, it's been a phenomenal journey, I'll tell you that.
The licensing and renewals and so forth, they're all gonna be handled by customer service here as well. We're working on some options for the officers to be able to license an animal out in the field, but the renewals, the billings and so forth, they're all just gonna be handled through our customer service.
And you talked about the revenue we don't get under the current county. Is there some estimate of what that revenue might be by bringing in?
We're seeing that Riverton got about 15,000 this last year for licensing. We haven't been able to get, for instance.
The county actually takes that money when they collect it, put it towards our overall bill. I don't know if you know that, and it brings our costs down with them. But if you add that $15,000 or $20,000, they estimate that coming in revenue to them, and that on top of 330, so it's 350. And we're gonna stand up buying new equipment at 315. It's phenomenal story year one.
Still feels like found money to me. It still feels like new money because the level of service is increasing and you're getting the dollar amount that you can choose where it goes. So it feels like found money.
It's been finally makes sense to pull,
Don't
to
say
start
found
this.
money with Gordon in the room.
Found money that has a destination. It does not include Gordon.
It's lost.
It's earmarked, it's earmarked.
It's earmarked
As you
money.
can tell, we're very, very excited, as we worked with Chief Reyes and Chief Carr and their team.
For the record.
Looking through the numbers and how do we approach this and meeting with Stone Ridge and South Jordan, West Jordan, it really painted a picture, yeah, we can do this. Just like we did our police department, we feel very confident and comfortable. Chief Reyes is actually a little more nervous because he has to get stood up and run, right?
You can do it.
Everybody else looks
Got
like
this.
Right in between town days.
Oh, come on.
One of the other, and I don't mean to belabor this, but one of the other revenues I think that we will recognize that we don't recognize currently with Salt Lake County is our impound fees and boarding fees and everything else that. So currently, if Salt Lake County, and correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, but currently if Salt Lake County impounds one of our dogs, they collect the impound fees and everything else. And I don't know if that offsets our cost or not, but with
the revenue they collect, yes.
Okay, so then, but it would be the same. So we would, even though we're getting cost estimates from partner shelters, those would be offset by whatever revenues or fees that our residents would pay to reclaim their pets. So it is not necessarily found money, but it's revenue that we would recognize more readily than going through a third party with Salt Lake County.
Good.
I think that all that, the money part of it is huge, but I also think that just the response part of it is huge. If I look at those numbers, I'm like, from 2015, we went from 11 to 14, but we went from 200,000 to 333,000. It just doesn't make sense to me. And so much of it is just simply reactive stuff, and it's just, we see that in our police department right now, that we're catching things because we're proactively looking for problems.
By the way, I know Sherry, you're quite the large animal fan.
Don't impound
To cover large animals, Stonehenge does not have a facility to board large animals, but we have about 96 stalls out of our own
Yeah, so we already.
corridor grounds, and actually Salt Lake County's used our stalls before when they abated a property out in Magnum at about 160
Well, that
acres.
works out well.
So we feel confident in that, and Stone Ridge veterinarian Clay Cannon said he'd be glad to come out here and still do the vet checks when we take those in too. So
I
we
think
feel very, very
no-brainer's the
confident.
best way to put it, financially and logistically.
Yeah.
Is there any direction or instruction that we need to give, or do we need to make any changes to the budget?
It's okay.
Yeah, I got one nod to.
Oh, yes. Thumbs up.
Five.
We already got an answer.
So, 10.3 is the first move on this. It's the interlocal with South Jordan. And that's for them to operate as a backup shelter and to provide backup service, that rotating that Brett talked about. And they're gonna approve their end of this on Tuesday of next week.
We anticipated this because of the direction since March when we got the new number that you were leaning towards doing something. And sorry, when you tell us to go fast, we understand what that means. And so we can pick it up and go, just like we did with our HPD.
So the only last thing I would mention from my perspective is obviously our partnership with Salt Lake County is important to us. And so I am certain that our staff has also explained our reasoning behind this. Certainly it's nothing personal, but our first priority is to our residents and the taxpayer dollars. And so I'm sure as we handle this transition, we will handle ourselves as we did with our new police department, which is, the utmost professionalism and appreciation for the service they've given us in the past. But in fact, we're growing into a bigger city and it's time to take charge of some things.
Good point. This has gone quick. We've had to give them verbal notice and then we followed up with a letter so they knew it was coming. You said you're ready to stand in by July 1st. We're like, okay, let's see if we can do that.
Well, and so the public understands, we're not severing a contract. The contract is set to renew for an additional 3 years.
Well, it has to renew every year.
Every year, but it's a 3-year deal. So we are stuck in the position of making a decision, do we commit to renew or do we go a different way?
This month with Natalia and those people that work at Salt Lake County Animal Services, they've done a great job.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They really have.
And I'm sure they're disappointed as well, and so again, it's just
Honestly,
managing the
they are.
relationship.
I feel like we've hurt their feelings, but I hope they understand. But they they would love, has time to come back with a different offer, but the problem is you don't have those boards in the county council, that'd be a long time. And I'm the one that, talks to you all and says, you know, we're gonna be better served by bringing this in-house and have that proactive communication with our residents. Oh, you're right, always, we're sensitive to that. And I owe them all things, it's been great.
Yeah.
Any further questions? No? Tammy, I know that we said we wanted to push off 3.5. Are we ready to do that now? Okay, so we'll go ahead in 3.5, discussion relating to formation of an inclusion committee. Wendy.
Okay, so Tammy and I are gonna kind of go through this together. In the middle of May, we had the opportunity to meet with Carlos Marinos, who's here tonight, to do a little bit of a presentation for us. He met with Councilmember Smith and Councilmember Orrin along with some staff to suggest that we start forming a diversity committee or inclusive committee. At the same time, Tammy and some of her professional groups have been working on this topic, and so Tammy's gonna kind of take the lead, and then we're gonna hear from Carlos. So I'll turn the time over to Tammy.
Okay, now I'm gonna try not to have my teeth chatter. It's okay, I've got one. Still cold. I know, it's just me. And I'm also going to look at my screen instead of that one, so I don't have to keep taking my glasses off and on and off and on. I don't like to do that. But as mentioned, this topic has been one of extreme importance among the public information officers and communication groups that I'm a part of. We've actually been focusing on it for a couple of months, and I think it's something that almost every department in the city is also considering in all of their decisions. Wendy considers this when she's looking at new parks and recreation facilities, Gordon when working on economic development, and Monty when he's looking at emergency management communications. So it's obviously a very important topic, and I think I've attended 3 conferences on it in the last 3 months, so I'm trying to take several days worth of information and give you kind of the Cliff Notes version in a couple of minutes. And we'll see how that goes. But it's a lot of information, and I think it's something that we'll probably touch on regularly throughout the next few months. So that being said, let's go ahead because I don't have the clicker. So let's move to the next slide. And if you just want to press play.
Wake up. Voice control is a breakthrough feature that gives you full control of your devices, with just your voice, period. It's a whole new way to do everything you love, period. Like this. Correct love. 16. Open photos. Scroll up. Show numbers. 13. Click share. 3. Tim. Next field. Let's try this one today. Thumbs up emoji. Click send. Open maps. Show grid. Long press it 20. Open app switcher. 4. Tap share. Tap Tim. Tap send. Hey, good to see you. Open music, turn up the volume. All right.
So, not marketing Apple here, but this video, it was played last weekend for the first time during an NBA basketball game, and several things went through my head when I watched it. And I tried to figure out if that's based off of all of the current trainings that I've had, or if I truly noticed it. So before I get into that, I'd just like to know, what do you all see when you watch that video?
Oh, I did want to test.
Sure, you're good. I was just gonna say, I've just been excited I can push the microphone on my phone and tell folks.
Yeah, that stuff
Right.
For me, it's about providing an equal experience for all, regardless of your abilities or restrictions. And if it's within our grasp to do so, then we should, and it is. I mean, they are our citizens as much as a citizen that doesn't have any restrictions.
Right. I think the entire communications department watched this, and again, we're all so familiar with this lately because it's just something that's being discussed at every single conference or committee meeting that we go to. And of course, my first thought was, what a neat feature, that's awesome. But then it definitely turned to, they really have it. Like, they get it. They want everybody to be involved in the experience that they provide through all of their gadgets. And then even in the marketing of it, they didn't market during one particular television show that maybe that particular group might focus on. It was general marketing. It went to everybody because they market to everybody and they try to be all inclusive. So I thought that was a really great video that they had put out, and I loved it because it just reminded me of all of the ways that communications needs to take a look at the way that we push out information, and are we really hitting all of the groups that are in our community, or are we just more biased to those that think or do just as I do? And with a growing community, we're just not all the same anymore. So, oh, I have the clicker in my hand. It's already there on my screen. So why is diversity and inclusion and representation, why are they important? And obviously it is because people who feel included are naturally more engaged. And when you're more engaged, you take ownership, you have more pride. There's more accountability, and it also generates a welcoming community. So, yes, we always say we are here, we are one community. But we're one community made up of different people. We're not the same. So when we communicate, we need to make sure that we're reaching all of the different groups. We started out as a small city that was mainly farmers and farmland. And now look at everything that we have. I mean, we've increased in our number of parks, our number of businesses, our number of people. And in those populations, we have increased in our diversity. So, let's see. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide so that I don't take a ton of time. So, communications, we were tasked in these groups to take a look at how we are communicating with our public. And I came back and I looked at everything and I met with the team and we started thinking about all of the groups that we're not reaching. So we started looking at better ways that we can do that. And we're now starting to take our newsletter and we want to offer it in different languages. And the newsletter will go out, but then there will be a link on the back that if they need it in a different language, they can go to our website. And then we will have, translating services come with all of that. They can get it, it can be translated. And same with our flyers. Our flyers will have this option on them. We have Ali Escobar that's now in our administration department, and she's willing to take all of our flyers and translate them so that we have that right on our website for individuals to go to and be able to access each of our flyers.
How many languages are you looking?
So as many as we can. We want to do what we can, and we want it to be simple. We don't want it to be something that takes hours and hours and hours. And mainly the services that are provided through Google and all that, they'll do a lot of this on their own. So then we just want to make sure that we have the links to those services.
Another opportunity too might be to go through high schools and language classes and have them offer a form of service. I mean, it could also just be a way to bring our youth into this kind of diversity principle that we're moving forward as well.
They've got Chinese in there.
Mm-hmm. And we're also making sure that we have closed captioning for all of our city meeting broadcasts. And then when we do videos, if they don't meet the needs for closed captioning, that we will provide English subtitles on them so that there's a lot of individuals out there that with their disabilities on their computers and on their phones, they have a program called Reader, and it will read everything for them. So when we post images like on Instagram, we have learned that we need to give a description of what that is, otherwise the reader just says image. but it doesn't tell them anything about it. So we're examining everything and making sure that all of these things are offered. Because it's not just in our communities, but even in our own staff. When you take a look at how much Herriman has changed, I think, how many staff do we have now? 100 and...
Oh, it's 120.
Yeah, and that's full-time regular staff, is that right?
Part-time, it's about 160.
So we have increased our diversity right here in this building. We have employees from different cultures. We have employees that speak different languages. We have employees with different abilities. And so we are working through and embracing that right here in-house. And we just want to make sure that we're doing the same out in the community. Let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else in here that I want to make sure that I cover. We'll go. So, I just wanted to give a little example. This example was discussed in one of the classes that I had, and they were talking about Hurricane Katrina. And during Hurricane Katrina, more than 1,800 individuals perished. 80% of New Orleans was covered in water, and 100,000 individuals did not evacuate. So they wanted to look at why. Why didn't these individuals evacuate? So they did this study, and what they found in their statistics was that 28% couldn't evacuate because of limited means. 37% didn't have a car. 36% needed assistance but didn't know who they could turn to. 84% of them were from homes with an income less than $50,000. 58% were African American, 66% were women, and 32% had a physical disability and did not have the means to evacuate, but did not know who to contact for assistance. So those were the statistics of those 100,000 people. So a recent study determined that 10% of our own population speaks a different language in their home. That's what, roughly 6,000 people out of 60,000 people. So it's quite a bit. So let's say that we have 600 people here that don't speak English at all. And let's say 150 of those individuals have limited abilities. How do we communicate with them in an emergency situation? Do we know who they are? Have we communicated with them? Have we done our outreach? That's something that all of us need to focus on, because it's not just communications and it's not just our emergency management team, it's public safety, it's our city officials. We all need to think of, if we're doing our outreach and if we are involving everybody in our community in the messaging that needs to go out, just, not just for city events or utility bills, but for emergency situations. Oh, I just lost my train of thought. I'm trying not to shiver. So, I know, I'm so cold. It's okay, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. But we have so many ways that we can do this, and so we need to make sure that we're doing our outreach. We have individuals in the community that want to be involved. They want to be a resource for us to reach out to all of these other diverse populations within our city to make sure that we're getting that messaging out there. We also have our community facilitator groups. So do they know how they can get involved with our community facilitator groups, our volunteer groups? Do they know how they can participate in our events and that they could be a part of our events? And so that's something that the communications department is really going to be focusing on over the next few months, is just increasing our outreach and engagement. And we're also going to work really closely with public safety, because in meeting with some of these individuals, we found that the cultures that they come from are very different from ours. And their perceptions of government and of law enforcement are very different. And sometimes it's got a very negative connotation with it. And yet our leadership, you guys are all open and willing to talk to everybody. We have a great law enforcement team who seem very engaging and I think would be very adept in working with all of these individuals. So, how do we start the dialogue? So there's several things that we can do. Obviously, we're working on translation, closed captioning, subtitles to help get our messaging out through several different avenues. But we could also consider workshops that provide training and education and development. Same with one-on-one meetings, whether they want to meet with their council members or with city staff or community facilitator groups. We want to educate them on all of the different committees that we have and encourage them to be a part of that, because that also, in those settings, they all have their own experiences that they can share with each other. And of course, when we share experiences, we come up with better ideas and ideas that involve everybody. Community representatives. We can always look to our resources that are already out in the community and have them serve as representatives for each of these diverse populations. And then we can meet with these groups regularly and make sure that the messaging that we're pushing out is getting to them and that we're doing it in the right way, and that we can kind of create this two-way conversation back and forth to make sure that each of us have our needs being met. They're receiving our message effectively and we're receiving their information effectively as well. And then, of course, there's always the opportunity of having a committee, a diversity and inclusion committee, and I believe that that is what Mr. Moreno wants to talk to us about. You should have received some information in your packet regarding what other cities have done, and he just wanted to take some time today to kind of talk about that and help us kind of explore the options that we have as we look to reach out to all of our populations that make up this great community that we have, so that we can really enhance our engagement and improve our outreach.
Yes, wow, this is a really intimidated group. My name is Carlos Moreno. I came here almost 10 years ago from Venezuela. You know, this kind of like, this is a big introduction, thinking my country and coming from Venezuela. But I don't want to, you know, it's not just about Carlos Moreno, it's about the community. Joleida is with us, Andrea and Alejandro, they are members of this community. Our point, I want to do the long story short, is like we would like to make a proposal to you, or that you can think about it, to create like a cultural diversity committee or something similar. You are the expert. We don't want you to do what you need to do or what you have to do, but this is a community proposal to engage and also to create a bridge between the minority community in Herriman with the rest of the people, you know. For many reasons. Language, some of our people don't speak English, the culture, some of them are afraid to the police department, and I don't know why, because I know these guys are amazing. Some of our people just are very shy to communicate with you because they, I don't know. In some countries, for example, police are very, we can see a lot of corruption in the police department, and also with our representative, or also our representative in different countries are like superheroes, and nobody can reach out these people. And here is different. This is the beauty for America, because we have these opportunities in this country to present ideas, to see opportunities, and to pursue the happiness, you know. And that's why we are here, to see if we can reach, we can build that bridge between our local leaders and you. And we are not here to divide anyone, to make like a, how can I say that, to make group of people. The only thing that the only thing that we want to do is create a bridge and help the city to be better. I don't know if you saw the University of Utah research about, specifically about the Latino population. Is growing so fast that it's impossible to stop it. According to University of Utah, the research, you know, according to Carlos or what I think. This is the future. To finish my, my intervention is like, what I love about this country is many things, but what I love about this country is the people, what I love about this country is the opportunity, and also that you as a leader, you can see the future. I can say about my country, like, politicians just see the next day and next day, but your society can see the future in 20, 50 years. That's why that's why you are successful. This is the best country in the world, no doubt, for me. I don't know if Alejandro want to add something.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alejandro. I'm 19 years old. I came to high school here, and then now I'm studying at the University of Utah. I study political science and international studies. The Latino population, like Carlos said, is growing so fast. I came here about 5 years ago without knowing the language. We're starting from zero, so the challenges to be where I am today has been a lot of them. So far, the studies that we're doing at the university saying like the Latino population is growing fast here and as well in the community of Herriman. We want to do a change. We want to bring our side of the story. We want to interpret everything we've been through and let you know, guys, that we're here to help. We're here to integrate ourselves into the community. We're not here to make clicks or anything like that. We just want to learn from you guys and experience what you guys have done and how we can improve to make the community better, because it's not only for a specific group, it's for everyone. Like I said, and like Carlos said multiple times, we want to be proactive in this matter. We want to show you guys that we're willing to help you guys. We're willing to work accordingly with the city. We want to show you like we're here. We want to be leaders. Like I have aspirations as well. I want to become a politician. I want to hopefully be like a city council or mayor or like governor. But like I know like a lot of people are studying right now at Herriman High, around Riverton High, Copper Hills High, and they have aspirations as well. They want to build a community. They want to be leaders, and they want to have opportunities. And they all like Carlos said, there's some of them are scared because they don't know how the system works. And we want to be able to show them like the system is here, the people are here, the resources are here, and we're willing to help. So that's it.
One last story, you try to explain how is our community from the other ones. I went to other meetings. I explained the same. I had a Mexican neighbor. This guy was living, in the same building, and this person had a really one of his child was get lost. Like this child was like 4 years old, lost. And I came to my apartment, and I saw the people crying, desperate. Like everybody was. I asked my wife, what happened? Oh no, because the child, is lost, and we don't know, and they don't want to call the police. And I go immediately to go to this guy. Hey, your child is lost because I had childs too. What happened? And the guy, no, don't call the police. And I called the police. He said, like, you know what? Let me handle this. Because, and this guy almost fired me because I want to call the police. I said no. And it's two part of the sad things about this guy don't want to call the police because he was thinking that he gonna get he was undocumented. But the other sad thing is like some of the people in the community, they are more afraid to talk to you than fix the problem. And I said this, and this is not a bad word in Spanish, but it's a bad word in English. I said here like, if I need to find my child, I don't care if I'm going to the hell. I'm gonna find my child, I'm gonna call anyone to find my son. In Spanish it's different because it's not a bad word in Spanish. Hell in English is a bad word. But just for let you know how is it a connection. I, as a person, as a father, as a citizen, I don't want to see more distance connection anymore. And that's why this is pretty much what we want to present you.
And I really appreciate them coming and kind of giving their perspective and the fact that they want to be involved and they want to help spread the message through their communities that, you know, it's okay to get involved and that they do have counsel and law enforcement that will work with them and that will talk to them and that will interact in a pleasant manner with them. And I think sometimes when we communicate, we end up communicating through our own bias. This is how we know to speak, and this is just what we do all of the time, and we forget that there are other individuals that make up our community that, as he said, they do speak differently, and sometimes the words mean different things, and so we want to make sure that we are communicating a message that can be understood by everyone. And I think it's important to gather different perspectives. It will make us a stronger community. At one of the conferences that I was at, the gentleman started the conference by saying, if you have the same people in the same room all the time, you will get the same results. Herriman is not the same. We're changing all the time, and though we want to always embrace who we are and where we've come from, we also want to be a stronger community by involving everybody in our community as we move forward and as we change. And so I just think that we really want to start focusing on ways to make sure that we are including all members of our community in our communication, in our events. We have so many great programs, and I think that it's so important for us to make sure that everybody knows about them. You mentioned an interest in law enforcement. We had a youth academy that started this last year, and they're also getting ready to start a citizens academy. I mean, there's so many programs that I think would help to educate on our law enforcement and our government. And I would love to just continue to explore ways to kind of increase our outreach and see what we can come up with in order to do that. So
I agree. Thanks, Carlos. I appreciated that Clint and I had the opportunity to meet with him and a few others that when they brought this idea. There was a word, I believe you said it, inclusion, or integrate. I think that's what you said, right? Integrate, and I expressed it to Carlos and the rest of them the other day. My concern about groups is if we have groups here, this group here, and there's never any integration. There's never any people identify themselves separately all the time, and then it becomes easier to distrust or dislike another group, and that was my concern when I talked to Carlos, was because he started talking about building this bridge, and bridges help integrate, help create community, and it's great to have a melting pot. Everybody brings what they have. But I think it's really damaging, and I said this then, I think it's damaging in our nation right now, that we have groups, this group, this group, this group, instead of just being a nation and integrating together and becoming united. We're separating ourselves by that. And so what I told him was I didn't want this group, this committee to represent a group. It needs to be all-inclusive so that people do feel like they can be integrated. Great comment I've had the opportunity the last few days to interview youth council members, kids who signed up to be on our youth council, and one of the gals, and this might be interesting for you, Carlos, and when you talked about doing the flyers and things like that, our communication in different languages, great idea, but then in my mind I think, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, right? Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime, right? The saying. Well, one of the youth suggested doing English language classes. She said, how about if our youth council, how about we form a committee of some high school kids who know different languages and stuff that they can teach English to people? Because then what happens if they move to a different city and it doesn't offer that, you know? But if we can, in our city, help educate them and help give them that skill, that language skill, so that they can be integrated into no matter where they go, then it might actually give them that skill, teach them, and then they can integrate into things. So, I mean, those are just some of my feelings about it, because I don't it makes me super sad, the division that we feel so much in our nation. And I don't want that here by feeling that. And I love that the presentation was, they agree, and they're like, we don't want that either. We want this to be a bridge, something that allows us to integrate into this community and bring our strengths to the community. So, sorry, long-winded.
Perfect, good thoughts. Well, I'm wholly supportive. Do you need nods? What are you needing from us
So we'll get
today?
something put together and come back with.
Yeah, I think we'll put together
A plan.
kind of a list of ideas and see which plan you'd like to go with, and then we'll go from there.
And from my perspective, Tammy, I appreciate your passion for this because it does create more work for you, but you clearly see the value in it, and I can sense your passion. So good work for you and your communications team.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have one more thing before this, because this kind of meeting take 3 hours, 4 hours. I know.
We're not involved.
I'm totally 100% with you. In the beginning, I told you, we don't want division, we don't want, I hope, I will have that magic touch to have that, that community that you are thinking. But just when you think about what we do with us, think about a father who is working maybe 3 or 2 jobs every day, started, no English. Think about a woman, homemaker who is just taking care of the kids. Think abroad, try to think in every situation. Maybe, sometimes, like you said, sometimes you can think, oh, this is work. But what I try to explain to our community is like it's not easy to say them, hey, just go there and talk to everyone, like in public and with your strong accent in Venezuelan English. No, it try to convince it try to have these people to show them to build that connection, because no everyone is a leader, no everyone is mayor or city council member, and that's why please think about it. I think that I think if you create that idea, a community with member of, for example, city council members, member of, for example, the police department, to get together, or for example, if the mayor creates something like a specific board with some cultural ethnic leaders in the community, everything will be a plus, just.
Thank you, Carlos.
Appreciate it.
No, thank you for your time.
Well, you're not gonna stay?
No, I have a pregnant wife waiting for me.
Oh, no.
Priorities.
I really appreciate Carlos and the others that came forward to help us to start this conversation, because I think it's easy to forget that we have
Thank you so much.
a lot of diversity in our community, and there's a lot that we can help them learn. There's a lot that we can learn from them. So I appreciate the discussion, and I'm supportive.
There's a lot of different groups, obviously. We have men, we have women, we have young, we have elderly.
Yep.
We have different languages, different cultures, and different abilities, and so
Yep.
it's definitely something to consider as we continue to grow.
Thank you, appreciate it. We have 7 more minutes. But do you think you can get through the next one in that amount of time, or should we wait until afterwards?
That's up to the council. So we talked about this in February, and we're kind of given direction not to move it forward, and then I was gone, and then it moved forward. So, so I don't know exactly what the discussion's going to surround or how long, so I can't.
I think
We've got
probably.
several other items come back in the work meeting, but we have nothing to go to close work tonight.
Oh, okay.
That's good news, right?
What?
So maybe
I don't know
Councilmember
if that's
Warren and
good.
Councilmember Henderson are the two that wanted to bring it back, so do you know how long?
Let's wait. Let's wait till after. I'm totally
Okay.
okay with waiting till after.
Okay.
We've got several other items we're gonna have to come back for anyways. So with that, I will accept a motion to recess our work meeting and go into our general meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I
Aye.
don't like sit by his computer for 6 minutes.